Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to give you a first look at a new Irix lens that breaks out of the mode that they've had so far of doing wide-angle lenses. Last year I reviewed this 15mm F2.4. This is their Blackstone edition, and I concluded that this is a really solid wide-angle prime. And they also have an 11mm F4, but this is a completely different kind of lens. This is a 150mm F2.8, and it is a 1:1 macro lens. And so obviously going in a completely different direction, and so this is both a medium telephoto lens with a nice maximum aperture of f2.8, but beyond that, of course, it is a 1:1 macro. And so today we're here to kind of explore the lens, its design, and give you a little bit more information about it. And so we're going to jump in and we're going to take a closer look at this lens. The first thing I do want to point out is that Irix has provided a really fantastic case for this lens. This is probably, I think, probably the favorite case that I've ever seen, because as you can see, it's reasonably compact and it holds a fairly good sized lens. And so it's got a nice carrying portion, and it's got a very molded exterior, but molded in such a way to where it really takes up the least amount of room possible, which means you might be able to actually put it into a camera bag and utilize it. And so as you can see, it's really designed to maximize what fits inside here as far as this lens. And so the lens itself, it's not huge, but neither is it tiny. It is a significantly sized lens. And of course, if you reverse the lens hood itself and attach that, you've got a fairly decent length of a telephoto lens. So let's take a closer look at what we've got here. Irix lenses are designed actually in Switzerland. That's kind of where the company is based, but their manufacturing is in Korea, which as you can see here. And so this is a pretty straightforward lens hood, pretty simplistic. It's just made of a plastic. It bayonets into place, and it's got kind of a matte finish inside to prevent stray light from bouncing around there. Irix pinch caps are nice, and one thing that's cool about them is they have that beveled front edge that helps to minimize their size. We've actually got a 77mm front filter thread here, and Irix actually makes their own line of filters, the Edge series. I'm actually reviewing some of them also right now, and so those filters, and of course any 77mm filter will work fine on there. Moving on, Irix has something kind of unique here in that they have got a tension ring here. So, I mean, in case you've actually got a position you want to hold, you can even go into a full lock position where it keeps the focus ring from moving. And then in its loosest position, obviously you've got the least amount of resistance, but you can program just a little bit in there if you're kind of doing, say, macro type work and you want a little more tension to make just really finite, very small adjustments. Then you might want to employ a little of that tension on there to help with that. The actual focus ring itself, a few kind of neat features here. Number one, it's got a rubberized surface that's kind of pebbled, but unlike, say, some of the Zeiss ones, it doesn't seem like it's going to have that propensity for picking up any kind of lint, and so lots of grip to it, nice and wide. As you can see beyond that, actually a section moves here that has the distance markings. Also unique and helpful is this ridge right here that helps you to have a very definite point to actually touch and to use. I suspect that after you use this lens for a while, you'll probably get a sense of where this sits in relation to focus, and so that can further help there. So as you can see here, we have got a fairly long focus throw, and I would say that is, it's about 280 degrees, 275 degrees from what I can tell, just, kind of eyeballing it there. But, it moves very nicely. And of course, as I've already noted, you can kind of control the damping a bit, but the actual smoothness is very good. As you can also see, this is an internally focusing lens, and so nothing is exchanging on the exterior of the lens itself. The lens weight is, it is hefty while not being extreme. And remember, this is a 150 millimeter lens with a pretty wide maximum aperture of f2.8. And if you take a look in there, there's a lot of glass in this lens. And so it's definitely capable of doubling as a portrait type lens and, or used as just a medium telephoto in general. But the weight of the lens is 1.81 pounds or 840 grams. And so not light, but when you consider that, your typical 70 to 200 millimeter f2.8 zoom lens is going to be somewhere between 1,430 and 1,500 grams. And of course, a fair bit more than that if you're talking about the new Sigma Sport. That's a pretty lightweight lens by comparison. Most of the barrel materials here are a metal alloy. Irix lenses are actually really nicely made. And so it does have weather sealing, got a gasket here along with some internal seals. It has an electromagnetic aperture, and so you're going to control the aperture from within the camera body, just like you would any other lens there. The other thing too is that it does have a tripod collar and tripod foot attached, and this is Arca Swiss compatible in that you can go right onto a tripod and just fasten that right down. The weight doesn't really demand a tripod collar, but it is nice for macro work, which a lot of which is done on a tripod, to have a tripod collar because it helps the balance and it's just going to enable you to get a little bit better finite control. As you can see, the tripod collar itself is made of a lightweight metal. It's got a felt lining inside to keep it from scratching up the finish on the barrel. And nicely, when you remove that barrel, rather than just remove the collar, that space on the lens barrel actually has some, an etched out and painted designation in here. And so it doesn't look, completely bare like some lenses do when you remove that tripod collar. But of course, if you're just kind of using it as, say, a portrait lens or whatever, you can remove that tripod collar and save yourself a little weight when it comes to that. Now, looking at the actual dimensions of the lens itself, it is 3.43 inches in diameter or 87 millimeters by a little over 5 inches in length or 128 millimeters. It comes in a Canon EF, a Nikon F, and a Pentax K mount, although I found that it does work pretty well via one of my adapters on a Sony E body, or in this case A7R Mark III body as well. Now, I should note that for whatever reason, it didn't bayonet on properly on my MC11. I had to use another adapter, so a little bit of an oddity there. I don't really know why that is, but that's the way that it was. Now, the actual aperture iris has 11 rounded blades. So the nice thing about that is that even when you're stopped down, which you'll be able to do a fair bit of, with a long focal length like this and still get a nicely defocused background. But the nice thing here is that you can stop that down and still have very, very rounded bokeh circles, as you can see here. And you can actually focus down with the lens itself. You can see if you look at the markings here that if you go down to 1.14 feet is minimum focus distance, or 0.345 meters, or about 34 centimeters. So you have a pretty nice working distance here, and that's where you get at 1:1. And so anyway, that's a nice working distance, obviously, for a lens like this. I will note, however, a long focal length like this and a lack of image stabilization, on a Canon, Nikon, or Pentax body means that doing macro work is probably going to require working off of a tripod. That's a pretty hard focal length to handhold, particularly when you're talking about the razor thin depths of field that come at that distance. The lens itself is 12 elements in 9 groups, and so a fairly straightforward, simple optical formula that is very useful. This is a full frame lens, and the aperture goes from f2.8. You can stop it all the way down to f32. So as you can see, this is a very impressive design, a very nice construction of lens, some really good handling aspects of it. And of course, all of this comes at an extremely reasonable price. It's coming to the US market at $595 US, which for a lens of this capability and this kind of optical performance, as we're going to see in our next episode, it's certainly a lot of bang for the buck. And so you pair that with, you know, for example, see in some of these images, I've used this Irix Edge, a circular polarizer. And so they have a really nice lineup of filters, not just designed for Irix lenses, obviously, in a variety of filter sizes, but nice quality, but really reasonably priced filters. And you can see from some of these photos that pairing this lens with a nice circular polarizer really adds a lot of punch to images. And so delivers some really beautiful results. And so, of course, I'll be breaking this down more fully. In the meantime, however, you can look in the description down below and can find a link there to my my image gallery. And so you can see photos both at macro distances and then also just for general purpose use. And yes, of course, you can also utilize it on a Sony body via an adapter. And so as it's a manual focus lens, you know, not a whole lot changes really about the behavior. If anything, you get the additions of having in-body image stabilization if you have a camera body like that, which is an advantage, of course. And so a lot of good stuff to consider there as well. So there's also some photos there taken with Sony that you can check out. And I'd recommend that you do so. There are some buying links in the description down below if you'd like to purchase one for yourself. And of course, beyond that, there's also linkage there to follow me on social media, to become a patron. And now my patrons do get early previews at upcoming content and a chance to interact with me before anyone else does on that content. So it might be worth becoming a patron and helping to support, do what I do. And of course, beyond that, you can also, if you haven't already, click that subscribe button right here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.